job, and I might be the only human for whom this was uplifting. You only saw episode 1, right? So that makes perfect sense. It's an honor, though, to be here with the cast and the creators of this incredible new series. Let me first introduce to you former President George Mullen, Robert De Niro. Co-creators, Newman, Oppenheim, Belcher, executive producer Lizzy Caplan, President Evelyn Mitchell, I wish, Angela Bassett. Alexandra Mullen, Congresswoman Alexandra Mullen, Lizzy Caplan, Judge Sheila Mullen, Joan Allen, Chief of Staff Valerie Whitesell, Connie Britton, and the geniuses behind Zero Day. Thank you, guys. I want to start with, I guess, my real life, which is the actual political moment, and ask you two how you thought of something this dark.
I don't know how dark it is now. It's may be more escapist.
Only for me.
So Noah and I are old friends, and we met up just up here at Columbus Circle a few years ago, and Noah at the time was running NBC News, and I was probably finishing, I think, the last season of Narcos, and we're sort of talking about ideas that interested us, and a lot of those begin with what sort of scares us. And as someone who Noah was running NBC News, and to ask him, what are you worried about? What's happening in the world, trend-wise that's alarming? And what he said to me scared me and inspired me, which was that our relationship with the truth is diverging. It's becoming, at the least two different truths, if not multiple truths that though mutually exclusive, somehow coexist, and that was alarming. And from that, we started talking about a story where a character in the middle of this thing found that the mechanism for truth was broken. His mechanism for determining truth was broken.
Yeah, before our meal, I had the pleasure of hanging out with my dear other friend Mike Schmidt, who's one of the most talented investigative reporters working today. Works for the Times, and he and I had been talking about a story that he had been chasing that coincided with this, which was the idea of a person who was involved in a very high stakes investigation, who was at the same time grappling with the decline of their faculties. And so when Eric and I were talking about truth and our broken relationship with it, that felt like a very clean metaphor for a character who's struggling with a broken compass, and a country that's potentially struggling with one as well.
The character who becomes our hero has everything you guys just described, but also literally the fate of the country on their shoulders, and it's yours. With your sort of finger on the pulse of everything happening in this country, what was it like to play a former president trying to keep the whole country together?
It seemed kind of apropos, if that's the right word. It seemed, everybody, what was done in the story was kind of affected by what's been going on, obviously. That's why Eric did, and Noah and Michael did such a terrific job getting, at least in that area somewhere, the feeling of what, not that exactly, but or that also could very likely happen. But so it was playing, you see, presidential figures, all kinds of politicians being interviewed all the time. You get a lot from that just by seeing them. And whatever information I get and sort of had over the years, just in my own experience interacting with people like that or here close to it. So, and they wrote it so well, it was not, that was the most important thing, that it was written so well.
There's such realness to the characters' interactions with civilians, with citizens. That seems to be the brilliance of the character that was written and your real sensibilities about what people want.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you'll take that. Angela, watching the president in the Oval Office, I mean, you are the president, and then the only president. You're dealing with Bob as a former president, but you are the only person with your fingers on the button. What was it like to play that role?
It was really, to embody that seat of power, that character, for the first time as an actor, and just to see that representation on screen, because we had to in our real lives. So it was quite an honor for me to be asked to do that. So I took it very, very seriously. And there were, role models for me, in Shirley Chisholm, who maybe was it 40, 45 years ago, who first woman to make a run for the presidency, and a black woman, and of course most recently with Kamala, but also then I would have to look to Barbara Jordan or Stacey Abrams. They're just politicians and public servants who really take that to heart, that the highest, they may see it in seats of power, but they really do have the heart to serve, serve the country, serve people, serve the nation and the world. So they were my roadmap, because they were sterling in the way they carried themselves.
Both of your characters are these figures that most people going about their lives don't need a president, but you still seem like real people. Not too good to be believed, but never compromised in your morals. Always, a president that always did the right thing. What was it like to sort of bring humanity to this position that's really opaque? Most people don't know a president.
I know. I guess I did have the great good fortune of meeting President Obama and Vice President at the time, Joe Biden, and to to interact with them was really something special to my heart, because they were warm and gracious and embracing, and I felt comfortable, and to see them with their sleeves rolled up, and it was wonderful. I remember being at the White House one time, and there was a party with all, because they were great lovers of music and the culture, and on stage, maybe the stage was this big, and Stevie Wonder was playing the piano, and Prince was performing, and
I was at that party.
And, I had made my plan that I knew the party was in the yellow room, and everyone's throughout the green room and the red room, but I was like, okay, whoever else was like, okay, it starts at this hour. We must inch our way to the front of the stage, so that we're there in place. And then I remember Gail King, who shall remain nameless, her yellow dress, came in 2 minutes before the event and parked right in front of me. And I was, oh, no. So I'm really just jumping into the stage, and I'm getting away from the president. And at a certain moment in time, Prince reaches down and like this and grabs my head, and I go up on stage and we dance, to the song that he's singing and playing, and right there is Obama, and he's dancing with Sasha, and it was just the four of us dancing on the stage for like a great 60 seconds. 60 seconds in heaven, okay? And then I got off the stage, and Michelle and her mother are in height. They didn't have to jockey. Their seat was secure. And Obama comes there, and he says, Michelle, Sasha asked me to dance, can you believe it? And I thought, so regular. So, a parent wanting, the appreciation of their child. Not the prince, not the sultan, but, it was just something so, human and real and everyday that all parents or all children of parents experience. So, So to bring that sort of groundedness to the character, because they already didn't think about it. I've seen it. Yeah, they could be great. They, same issues we all face. Well, not, and a few more, and a lot more.
I feel like my work here is done. I've never heard that story before, and I've heard a lot of people telling stories about being at that party. Is that right? Connie, you were at that party? Yeah, let's hear your dance story.
Oh, well, I mean, because I was there, because Obama was out in the audience. I was dancing with Obama out there. I remember that moment when he was like, Sasha asked me to dance. I was so excited. What a crazy time that was.
Right?
I mean, we don't need to digress.
Hurry up!
Those were some fun
bummed.
parties.
I was not at that party.
All right, I think it's my responsibility to get us back on track. The burden will fall to you, Lizzy. You play like the impossible character, a believable, likable, badass member of Congress who in the end does something pretty bad, but is still, one of our heroes. What was that character like?
Did Gail King get to dance with you?
When you cut lines.
I have so many more questions about that. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Alex, my character, she does have this political role and she's on the political stage and representing like this, young, fresh, excited blood, very leftist. But she's also the daughter of a former president, so somebody who's raised in the White House, and the family, the drama within this family is not unsubstantial. Like it's I had a brother, there was a son, he died, we've never really talked about it. So there's all of these sort of familial issues on top of political issues, on top of the fact there's a 0-day attack. So there really wasn't a moment in this show that I felt like my character wasn't juggling like 20 things at once.
What about that ex-boyfriend of yours?
I know, that guy too. Totally forgot about it until just now. That's boyfriend. But yeah, so it was sort of like I guess the best politicians are really good liars, but I think it's easy to think like, oh, lying is all bad. I actually think lying served Alex really well. I didn't want to play this character as like twirling a mustache or hiding all of this stuff. Like I think she was really convincing. I think she was convincing herself. But literally every beat of every scene, there was what was happening on the surface and then like 15 layers of subtext. And I think Alex sort of represented this thing that is happening with politics now or just sort of the culture in general now where the youth is more valued than the wisdom of our elders. And I think that is a mistake in politics, and I think it is a mistake in the culture at large, and our show definitely shows why.
Your character, I don't want to give anything away. I don't think this is in the first episode, but it might be. But there's a conversation you have with Bob about how the commission will take away people's rights, and it's so prescient. And it's for you who delivered it, and for you, Noah, who and Eric, who probably wrote it. But it landed so much differently after someone who ran on doing some of those things won. And I wondered what it was like. Do you remember that scene that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What that was like to shoot, and if it feels different.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what Alex is saying throughout. I believe, and I won't give anything away either, but I believe that there's a reason why Alex feels justified in her thinking. And we shot this show before the election, which is crazy. Like this panel would feel so different had it gone a different direction. We find ourselves here, and it almost feels like we shot this show like 500 years ago. Like some of it is eerie. It continues to be eerie, like how much stuff is echoed in like the real world. and the actual news cycle, but really I look back at that time and it was a hopeful time compared to now, and everything is horrible and we're all gonna die. But not you, Angela, because you dance with
Do you guys have any thoughts about writing that material now?
I mean, I think that to whatever extent it feels prescient, it's because, not because we're so brilliant, although Eric is brilliant, but it's because, people always say history tends to repeat itself. At the very least, history rhymes, that these themes are universal and timeless, and that, authoritarian leaders don't rise in a vacuum, and people don't give away their rights for no reason at all. They give away their rights because they're scared. And authoritarian leaders take advantage of that fear and that panic. And so that idea is, you see play out over and over and over again in history.
Yeah, there were things that happened while we'd be sitting at the monitors, and something would happen in the world that was something that was in our show. It was very strange, kind of like a Twilight episode where you wrote a script and then it all kind of happened. And that was sort of there's a guy, William Goldman, is one of the great screenwriters of all time, who said about Hollywood, and I think it's true of the world, nobody knows anything. You have no idea. People who were convinced that, Hillary Clinton was going to win in 16 and convinced that Trump was going to win in 20, and then it's like, we have no idea. And I think that all you can do, as Noah says, is sort of look at the human condition, which is, despite its unpredictability, is kind of predictable. There people will do things in their, out of fear and in their own self-interest that we can pretend surprise us, but in reality, everything that happened, every horrible thing that's happened in the world had really smart people at the center of it. Many of them went to Harvard, where Noah went. There were decisions that were made that created a cascade of disaster. So, I think for us, we just kind of let the characters decide where it was going to go, and this is where it went. And then we had, of course, Leslie Lincoln-Glatter, who I think is the best director working in TV, to come in and with our phenomenal cast, and I think everybody understood what we were going for, which as writers makes all the difference in the world when you're making a movie or a show.
Leslie, I got to watch you one day just totally immersed in Bob's eyes. It was one of those scenes, right, in the study, right? And what was it like to immerse yourself in all of their stories?
It was an incredible gift. I have to say, I love being a storyteller in this crazy way that we all collaborate with artists like are up here on this stage. And coming into this and knowing that I was directing all 6 hours, we shot for 103 days, and it felt like doing a huge film. It was hard to see it. Yes, there were chapters in this, but you really have to look at the whole. And we would often shoot scenes from different episodes in the same day. So to track both politically where we were, because it is a paranoid conspiracy theory story, so plot-wise, but if you don't have amazing, complex, complicated characters with that kind of thriller plot, you don't have anything. And sitting up on the stage with Bob and Angela and Lizzy and Connie and Joan, and of course Jesse Plemons and Matthew Modine, who are here tonight, and Dan Stevens, incredible cast. And I have to say, Eric and Noah wrote such a complicated, layered story. So together to be guardians of that story, and this was very well researched. I think it felt realistically real, and for me, some of the best scenes where you have two characters with completely opposing views and they're both right. So it was a wonderful, exciting, terrifying, joyful challenge.
Do you ever feel, your body of work is so stunningly close to some of the real things that happen, right, in our lifetime. Does it ever feel too close?
Yes. Yes. Yes, it does. And not in the moment that you're doing it. In the moment that you're doing it, you have to stay honest to the material. And but in looking back, absolutely. I was on a series for a long time called Homeland, and we spent a lot of time in DC meeting with the heads of the CIA, NSA, DNI, and that's where the season would come from, those stories.
They're all gone.
And they're all gone.
That was a bad news, Joe.
And so for me, looking at what goes on in the back rooms of power and being able to show that in some way, I think is really fascinating. And again, with a thriller that is a great motor of storytelling, you've got to have great characters with that.
Joan, you, having worked in politics, your role is to me like the center, right? Like you hold your family together in the end by bringing in the former chief of staff, Connie's character. You hold the former president together, who holds the current president together. I mean, what was it like to play a character who's sort of everyone's center?
I guess you don't really think about being the center person when you are the center person. You just are kind of living your life, and you're living your life the way that makes sense to you. And she's a very seasoned person. I mean, she's been, we had established by talking with Leslie deeply about the relationship between Bob's character and mine, and how deeply he relied on her advice, throughout, for many, many years throughout their relationship. And so I just thought of her kind of as an old hand. We had established that he had probably been governor of New York before he became the president, so she was the first lady of New York. She's been the first lady of the country. She's now, she's a judge in her own right. So I just kind of felt like there was just sort of a no-nonsense kind of straightforwardness about her, and I don't know that she could even be any other way than what she is. And I think on top of it, having, in my estimation, a personal tragedy that is the greatest, arguably, that one could ever withstand in their life, kind of also puts things in perspective. That's one thing that I worked with as an actor, is like the worst thing in the world happened to her. So now, what do you do? And how do you live your life, and how do you carry on, because you have another child, and you got to carry on. And I just think that is kind of innately who she is as a person. And I thank Leslie and Bob for talking a lot about the relationship between the two, and it felt like a real partnership, which was really fun to play.
And some of the most interesting things to watch unfold is the relationship between your two characters. What was that like? I mean, you bring Valerie back, and it's sort of this private and public roles that is so true in politics, that they're, and I think Michelle Obama's talking about this. She's sort of unpacking this now for the very first time on her podcast, what all those years of being that person was like for her personally.
Yeah. Well, I think it says quite a bit that she believes, she believes in the greater good. I think she has a pretty clear picture of some sort of forthrightness.
Oh, I don't mean anything on the Obamas along the storyline, because I recognize you've all seen just what episode. I just mean being a first spouse is sort of something that is a culture we're all, as I'm thinking about the story though in Zero Day, and I'm thinking about some of the stuff that Michelle Obama is talking about deflecting, I just mean the very sort of private role of a spouse is something that as a country, I feel like we're just starting to learn about.
Yes,
Right, because like Laura Bush didn't really talk about it, and Barbara Bush never talked about it, and Hillary Clinton became, it's just such, I feel like our culture is so riveted right now by the role that you play.
Yeah, well, I was thinking in terms of the decision that she makes to bring Connie back. I mean, she really has this, she has a deep love and admiration for Bob. and for his beliefs and believed in him as a politician with her whole heart. And so I believe that she would do whatever she felt like she should do to help support him. And so by bringing Valerie back in is like, somebody's gonna keep an eye on him, I think she's got the chess pieces all kind of in her head, and is willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that he's okay, and, that's a pretty extreme choice, and, she chooses to make it.
It's such a cool
Yeah.
character that you play, as well, Connie. Talk about playing the former White House Chief of Staff, who comes back into service in the most dramatic way, and then as Joan's describing, in the most complicated personal way.
I thought it was really, it was fascinating to look into what that role is really, in the White House, and it's so relentless, and the relationship between Joan's character and my character was so interesting, because I like to think, as we're basically two women holding up arguably the most important man in the world right now, and we each did it from a very different vantage point, but it was very interesting to explore how much complete dedication is required in that role, completely selfless dedication, and the small amount of time that I've spent in Washington as well, aside from the Obama party, I've seen that in action, and despite the fact that sometimes we feel like our government is letting us down, what is required of our public servants is really profound. And so it was for me as an actor, it was really fun to explore that. And then, of course, written so beautifully, the little twist, and I don't know if maybe we're not doing spoilers here, but there's a little twist where that I think also is reflective of the intimacy of that role, the absolutely required and necessary intimacy of that role, and also the fact that for a chief of staff, a female chief of staff, it's really hard to have any life outside of that role. And furthermore, as a woman, to be playing a role that is so completely selfless, that's a deep exploration in and of itself, because we as women tend to lean on in the selfless realm anyway. So yeah, there was just a lot of complexity to it, which I was really appreciative of in the layering of the story.
I mean, I've had that observation, having worked in politics, that without grandstanding the actual leader, the chief of staff, they get it right, that it's the chief of staff that by 6:30 in the morning has done 30,000 things already, and by the way, here's your whole day ahead of you, and I'll be here when you leave.
And gets no credit.
Right.
Is 100% behind the scenes. There can be no ego, which is really, it's quite fascinating to recognize that, and to see the reality of that.
So what do you guys, now that this has sort of been out there in this political moment, and you look at this extraordinary moment the world over, I mean, do you feel like the piece that you want everyone to grab onto is the humanity that everyone brought to these extraordinary stories, or is it this moment and the story and the thread, or is it all of it?
I mean, I think what we hoped, I think, was to promote some, I wouldn't say better understanding, but at least some awareness of the fact that, we've reached this point of divergent truth, and at the end of the day, the one thing that maybe doesn't break is your ability to do the right thing, some moral compass. And when we looked at everyone on this, we really got every first choice that we had. We every person that we went to in every department, in every role, we got our first choice, except for Bob, who we, but he was great. But we got everyone we wanted, and each character has a role, obviously, to play in terms of reinforcing that truth. And every character could explain to you why they're right, which I think is an important thing to recognize. They are as certain as they are right as you may be certain that they're wrong. And Joan was humbly speaking of her part in the show, but I think to me and to Noah, she was the true kind of moral compass in our show. And ultimately, the George Mullen Bob's character makes this, you guys have only seen the first episode. Have any of you seen the whole show, or most of you? Some of you have, yeah. He goes on to make, or is forced to make, a pretty dramatic choice. I think at the end of the day, what we hope to impart was that even when it's difficult to determine what's real and not real, that endures. The right thing, it is always present if you look for it.
I have to say, because I was sent the first script, Noah and Eric's script, and I was blown away by the script. Like, I read that script and went, oh my God, we're looking at truth in a post-truth world where you can't tell the difference between fact and fiction. We can't agree and opinion. And I was completely compelled by that. And that was a very good reading, Eric, about Bob.
Yeah.
But Bob was involved.
I'm inspired by Bob.
I just have to say, Bob was a huge part of the process of developing this. And that was an incredible process.
A great
working
partner, for
Yeah.
sure. From it was I went, Noah and I had our meeting, and a few days later I had the privilege of having dinner with Bob, and I told him this idea, and he said, I'll do that, and really became
Why did you say yes?
a part of it from that day forward.
I don't remember exactly, but I liked it.
Yeah, but were you feeling, I feel like you know more about politics than half the people I work with. Did you feel like the story set in this moment felt important to you as well as the material?
Yeah, we met, and I didn't even know what we were going to talk about, and then you brought up this area of what the story would be, and I thought, yeah, that's good. And so the next step was to read what they would write. So he wrote an outline, or what you call, I guess, a kind of a treatment.
Yeah.
And then I said, that sounds good, that looks good, and a couple of episodes, the way I remember it, and that was it.
There was a lot, Bob's being modest, there was a lot of, hey, it would be better if it had this, and then we just kept, changing based on who this, Bob, I think, brought immediately the character to, this is who this guy is. And a lot of the things that, we had him do were born of, these conversations about, doing the right thing even when it's really hard. And so he, beyond being the force that, in Hollywood, there's always someone who's, you're relying on to push it through. And I think, for us, it was Bob. And I think who this character is was very much born of those many, many conversations that we had with him in the development process, which was a real privilege.
Unless anyone wants to share any more secrets about the Obamas and that party, time for a final word if anyone wants to make one.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.